Ingredient challenge number 2. They really didn't have a whole lot of room to work. I did get some Glenlivet Founder's Reserve. We had to use Scotch this week. We also had to use Fruit Loops. So what are you supposed to do with Scotch and Fruit Loops? Well, when somebody throws Fruit Loops at you, they also decided to throw Mad Dog 2020 at me as well. These were my 3 ingredients. I had to come up with a recipe for this. Basically, Fruit Loops treats is what we're gonna do. We're gonna add a little bit of the Mad Dog 2020 to the marshmallow mixture, add a little more fruity flavor to it. Then I'm gonna hook up a butterscotch sauce made from scratch using the Glenlivet, and we'll coat the top of it with that. It's gonna be complete sugar rush, a little bit of that boozy taste in there, awesome sweetness, a lot of chew going on. I'm gonna get started with this right now. Gotta get the butterscotch going, and then I'm gonna start working on the Fruit Loops treats. To the stove! Let's get started making the butterscotch sauce. We got our pan. It's going to be on a little bit of a low heat. We're going to start melting the sugar down. This is going to take a little while, so you got to have some patience. It's a low heat, so you don't burn the sugar. It's just slowly kind of melting it down. The sugar is going to be on the stove for about 10 to 15 minutes. We're going to give it some stirs here and there, but it's just going to really just need to melt down. And then we're going to add everything else in after that gets started. Keep an eye on it. It's not like you have to be here the entire time standing over it, but at the same time, you don't want to burn the sugar onto your pan. So just make sure you're close by, but you don't have to stand here. Once the sugar is getting warm, that's when you really want to make sure you're stirring it, because you don't want it to stick to the bottom of the pan and then cause you to get that burnt sugar on the bottom. Let the sugar melt, it kind of starts clumping up, and then once it starts to get more and more liquidy is what we're looking for. But as for right now, we want it to melt down and then turn to that brown color that caramel looks like. It takes time. We still have some chunks down in there, so we're just kind of cooking that down on the low heat. You just want to make sure you keep it on low. Don't get too frustrated and try to speed up the process, because you want everything to melt and then get that brown color. You don't want to get too brown before everything is melted, because then by the time everything's melted, you're going to be burning, so you don't want to do that. You just got to take your time, be patient, just let everything kind of happen on its own. Pretty soon, we're just going to be letting it simmer for a little bit of time on its own to get that brown color in there. And we're getting really close now. It's exciting. Whatever you do, don't get this on you. That is one of the biggest things you do not want to do while you're making caramel, butterscotch, or anything like that, because it is hot, it is sticky. Without a lack of a better term, it's very similar to napalm. It gets on your skin, it starts burning you, and you cannot get it off. You have to be very careful when you're messing with sticky, hot substances. It's just not something you want to happen by getting it on your skin. It's brutal. If you do have some big chunks in there, just kind of crush them with the tip of your spoon and then just continue to stir. We're at a pretty good liquidy stage now. I'll give you a little peek at this. All of the sugar's melted. We're going to get it to a little bit of a simmer. Once you get those little bit of a bubbling going on, we're going to add in a half a cup of water. I did put the half a teaspoon of salt in there. So it's water, half a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to take our scotch, put another half a cup in with the water. So you're going to have a full cup of liquid, half water, half scotch. And then we're going to add that into this once we get a little bit of a simmer going. I'm going to start adding the liquid in. What this is going to do, it's going to cause a reaction in here, and it's going to cause all of that hotness that we just made into a syrup to clump back up again, because you're adding cooler liquids into that hot syrup. Once that happens, just make sure you are careful. You want to tilt the pan and pour the liquid down the side. If there's bubbling, be careful you don't burn yourself. That's why you always, when you use extra large pot, don't use something really small, because that's when everything is really close together, and then you'll end up hurting yourself a little easier. Just let that all come together, and then when it clumps back up, we're just going to let it melt back down into a sauce again. Then we'll add the rest of our ingredients. This is a pretty cool little thing going on in here, so we'll see if we can get a shot of it and you can kind of see what's happening. This is the clumped up syrup that forms once we hit the cooler liquid in there. And you can really smell that Scotch aroma come off of it. So you're cooking the alcohol out, but it's just going to leave a flavor in there. All we have going on now is that liquid is now in with the sugar. You still have that hard, crunchy, crystallized stuff that forms up after you add the liquid to it. And then we're just going to wait a little bit, keeping it on low, and just let that all melt down back into a sauce again. After you add that liquid into the pot, you get all those giant clumps of the sugar and everything, that reaction that happens. So you want to bring it back up to the simmer to melt all of those clumps back down in. I had a little bit of a crustiness from the sugar on the sides of my pot. You can use your wooden spoon to try to push that down, but you want to be really careful, like I said before. You don't want to splash anything into that sauce, because if you get on you, it's really going to burn. It's really hard to get it off. A non-stick pot would be a little bit easier, but you really need to use a very thick pot for this on the bottom so everything heats evenly. Most non-sticks don't have a really good base to them. We're almost finished with getting all of the clumps melted back into a liquid. Looking pretty good. Now that that is done, take it off of the heat. You can turn that off. This is a really, really nice golden kind of brown color. I'm going to add the butter in. It's 4 ounces of butter, so this is definitely a healthy dish. Just a topping, right? Don't splash it. Tell you. Whatever you do, don't splash the butter when you put it in. You can put it in smaller pieces, you can do whatever you need to do, but don't splash yourself with this liquid, all right? You gotta be really careful. But once we melt this butter, which really won't take too long, we're gonna add some vanilla in, and then this sauce is pretty much done. And this sauce is looking really, really good now. It's really cool to watch the transformation into the clear liquid. This just beautiful, beautiful butterscotch sauce. Look at that. It's so great. It just looks so good. It's nice and smooth. A teaspoon of vanilla going in here. Good aroma. I want to taste this so bad right now, but I know I'm going to burn myself. Oh man. Oh man. Oh, it's so good. I could drink it. I could. Now that this is done, we're just going to set it aside. Let this cool down. It'll thicken up a little bit, so that way when the Fruit Loop treats are done, you can drizzle this over the top and it'll be a little bit thicker. I'm going to go get everything together for the rest of the recipe. If you've ever made Rice Krispie treats, we're going with the same thing here. We're going to melt butter. We are going to dump in our marshmallow as well. Melt all of this together till it's nice and creamy. A nice little creamy cloud in here. Let's add in our blue. It smells really fruity though from the Mad Dog being in there. It's just going to add a little bit more of a fruity taste to it that goes along with the Fruit Loops. We're getting to a nice creaminess now. I'm going to add in the Fruit Loops, give it a quick stir, and it goes right into the pan to set. Here we go, into the pan. Smash it down nice and even. We're going to let the Fruit Loops here set up, let them cool down so they become one, give it just a little bit of time, and then we're going to finish it off with our homemade butterscotch over the top. We're at the culmination of ingredient challenge 2. Now I'm just going to finish it off by drizzling the butterscotch sauce on top of this. Pour it slow. I'm going in here. A lot going on. It's really sweet. It's fruity. You do taste a little bit of the Mad Dog in there. Just that raspberry kind of taste. The butterscotch is fantastic though. Come on. Sarah's scared.
So good.
It's sweet. It's really good. It's a giant mess. I look like I got like a Fruit Loop Slimer going on here. It's a really sloppy, messy version of a Rice Krispie treat. The Fruit Loops actually give a great flavor to this. All the fruitiness, a little bit of that backing up of the Blue Raspberry Mad Dog 2020 in here. The butterscotch sauce over the top is really money. It is pretty tasty, especially this sauce. Definitely gotta make the sauce. Throw it over ice cream, eat it with your bare hands, get messy. Just make the kids eat it at like a birthday party. They would have a blast with it because it's such a messy, sticky, sweet dessert.